Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share insights on what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumey, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the CEO of Lightbridge Academy, Gigi Schweikert. Gigi, how are you today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I am very excited about talking to you and most excited about talking about Lightbridge Academy and how we have emerged as a brand and as a franchisor.
You are. You're not really an emerging brand. You guys are an established brand now, but we got a lot to cover, don't we?
We absolutely do. So I will say we're an established brand in the sense that now our royalties are sufficient for sustaining our operating costs. But I will say one of the pinnacles of really reaching that mature franchisor is 100 units. Now, our units are a large footprint size, anywhere from 10,000 square feet to 14,000 square feet. It's a little bit harder to get that many there, but we're almost there. So we're almost to 100. And when we get there, I'll feel fully mature.
Well, I want to cover a little bit of backstory for the audience because the model of your business is different and also just the experience of Lightbridge Academy. So you're not the founder, but you came in initially the company, I understand, back in 2014 as the COO and been
Correct.
Promoted. You've been the CEO now for how many years?
I've been the CEO for 2.5 years now.
Sweet. You have 100 franchises, 73, I understand, are open, 20 some odd in development, and we have 17 company-owned locations. So you've done the thing where many franchisors have struggled with, and that's having the company-owned location and the franchise system as well. And we'll get into that, but let's go back in time. So
okay,
you start up the company back in 2014 as the COO. What was your background?
So that is a great question. So we are the solution for working parents and early childhood education. So Lightbridge Academy is serving children from 6 weeks to 6 years during the school year and up to 10 years during summer camp. So my experience has been always in early childhood education prior to coming to Lightbridge. So these last 9 years have been my roller coaster ride to learning franchising. And I must say, it's been a really an amazing aha moment for me to understand that franchising is the infrastructure of business and the way that the United States grows and our capitalism. And I absolutely love it. I never understood when I was driving down a busy street and I would see a McDonald's and I would see whatever type of franchise might be out there, an edible arrangement or whoever it might be, that all of those were privately owned. I think when we see that Marriott or we see that, we're always thinking that, this big company that owns it, but it really is how people are privately owned. So prior to learning about franchising over the last 9 years, I had the great opportunity to work in many different arenas in early childhood education. So I started as a teacher myself. I've been a toddler teacher and a preschool teacher and a third grade teacher. I've been an assistant director and a director, a regional manager, a vice president of development, a vice president of sales, so many different things. And so the person who puts their hand in the toilet and pulls out the Lego and plunges the toilet and all the things that we do when we're running a business. And I've been able to do that in so many different places: on a ski mountain, employee sponsored, for the United Nations, for Head Start, which is helping children that are underserved. So it has been a very wonderful career that led me to this point with 4 of my own children that range in age from 22 to 28. So they're grown and adults now. And so that's what I brought to the table, and then had the great experience of learning franchising. And I will say quickly, but importantly, that the franchise community is so collaborative. They're so open. They share best practices. Even within the same industry and sector, those bigger players out there like Goddard and Primrose are always sharing. And it's wonderful, Kitty Academy, to be in an arena and to be in a business concept and industry, franchising and early childhood education where we see such collaboration.
Most industries don't have the collaboration across competitors. And secondly, you touched on this earlier, where there's just a lack of broad understanding is that each franchise, independently owned and operated, is the small mom and pop that is putting in the blood, sweat, and tears into their business. They might see that nationally recognized name, but our government needs to better understand that each one of these owners are the people within the community. We would be in a whole lot better place, I think, with the legislation that's talked about now, with this whole Joint Employer Act and everything. It would be better if it was better understood on really who franchisees are and how the beauty of franchising, this relationship of being able to deliver the product or service by offering the systems and processes and the resources. We've been in a better place, right?
Frank. I can't say that enough. And I have to say the IFA has done such a good job with advocacy and are really helping all of us and hopefully helping those in government places and just the general population to understand that when you do go to that franchise, that you know that it's a national brand, that it is your next door neighbor or the people down the street who are running that particular store and who are giving to the baseball team and who are helping in the parade for the holidays and all of those types of things, and having their children work there and providing jobs for people and being out and about in the community. And it's just a wonderful thing because it gives people an opportunity to get into business, but to have the technology and infrastructure they need to run that business, to have the support to be able to do it, to understand the concept, whether that's a food concept or early childhood education or working with cars or whatever it might be, or getting our hair cut, all the different things that we all need, and being able to place a framework around it and continue training and support throughout the lifetime of the franchise agreement, which is so exceptional. We just recently had an owners conference a couple months ago, and I call it my work family. I know the franchisees and the people in our home office who support the franchise community so well, their weddings and their births of children, and when people aren't feeling so well, and when they're deaths in families and things like that. And so it goes above and beyond the everyday of working that business to that community of who we are as a brand as well, which is very satisfying.
Gigi, I want to kind of get in your head here for a moment of back when you came on board. There's no question that your background in education helped when you came into the system, but you guys have already been franchising for 3 years before you come in as a COO. What was life like for you? Because there's emerging founders that are listening to this and they need to take the next step. They need to hire for their weakness. They need to now hire a COO. So you are that COO. I want to know what it was like when you came in. How many franchises were you guys at that point?
Oh, we had one franchise that was in the process of opening.
Okay.
So when I came on board, they were all company centers and one franchise that was beginning to open.
And like, I don't know, almost all of us, you didn't come from a franchise background.
I didn't come from a franchise background, but what I came from that I think we all in business do, if we do it well, is I came from a relationally driven, service-based, customer wow background. And so if you're going to provide a product or provide a service, you're going to do it in the best way possible, recognizing that people and relationships are the most important thing that you can cultivate. And secondly, you're going to do it through a process, and you're going to do that process over and over, and you're going to do consistently. And sometimes it doesn't sound fun, but if you do that process over and over and you do it consistently, the outcome and the satisfaction that the consumer receives and the satisfaction that the franchisee receives and everyone that's supporting them feels great about it. The franchising piece, I think for me, is best described as a recipe. You're paying when you are buying a franchise to understand exactly what it is that you need to do. with 17 company centers that are doing very well, we actually know what it takes every day to do it, what the problems are, what the issues are, whether those are macro or micro, whether those are external or internal. And if you follow that recipe, in most situations, it's going to work. So that's why that consistency is so important. And it's simplistic, but it's hard. And the reason that it's hard is many people who go into franchising are obviously entrepreneurial in spirit because they want to start a business. They're not working for someone. And so they themselves already have good ideas. And so it's really kind of hard to stay in the lanes of what you're supposed to do in franchising when you're an excited person who's willing to take risk and willing to work on your own. And so it needs to be a nice symbiotic relationship between the franchisee and the franchisor.
Absolutely. What was the challenge for the company when bringing you on?
I think the challenge for the company in bringing me on was, I think the founder, Guy Falzerano, did a great job of making sure that he had a team around him that understood the product and the service. So for me, being that early childhood education expert who understood business, and then making sure that he also had people who understood franchising. So we had a really good senior team that half were from the early childhood education field and half were from the franchising field, whether that was hospitality or, as I indicated before, restaurants or things like that. And so what's important really, I think, is for a CEO or founder to make sure that he or she surrounds themselves with people who know more than they do.
Totally.
And so what Guy recognized is that I knew a lot more about early childhood education in many different sites. He had done a great job and had a great basis, but was a little bit more well-known in that, and then bringing me on for that reason, which was helpful for the brand too. So I think one of the greatest things that a leader can do, and the hardest thing that a leader can do, is recognize they don't know everything, and recognize that there are going to be times where they're going to need to hire people who are going to be smarter and quicker and probably going to take their job one day. And that's the best part about it, is that you get to help people grow and succeed.
So curious to know, when you were starting out as the COO in this company that was just beginning to launch franchising, do you remember back then what were the most important things that you needed to work on?
There were a couple things that I needed to work on. The most important things that I needed to work on was understanding franchising. So anything franchising that I could read, I literally sat down and read the FDD. I read Franchising for Dummies. I went to conferences. I hired consultants. Everything that I could do franchising. I went to other brands to really immerse myself into that. And I think that it took me a few years to really appreciate it and understand that. I think the other piece was the financial piece, and making sure the unit economics and that financial model was really fine-tuned in a way that helped franchisees to really excel, not only from a satisfaction point of view in their franchise, but from a financial point of view. So how do we help them, not just with that top line revenue, but how do we help them with what that EBIT is going to be, helping them through what staff management is, or through expenses and things of that nature.
We talk about unit economics right at every franchise conference. We talk about it on the podcast all the time. We can't talk about it enough because in my mind, there's always an emerging franchisor that's starting out. That's, of course, we worry about selling franchises and keeping the lights on. But if the franchisees aren't making money, you're going to be a statistic and you're not going to last very long.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's important to, there are different concepts that come through, but there's certain concepts that are want concepts and certain concepts that are need concepts. I think most of us need to get our hair cut at some point. And I think we need childcare. I think COVID taught us very well that you can't sit home and try to work remotely and have your children crawling at your feet or wandering around your home. You can't give either one the attention that they really need. And then there are concepts that come through in franchising that, are somewhat explosive and then die down a little bit. And that's okay too. That's the bells and the whistles that make it really fun in life. But I love being in a concept where we're really giving back and we're really essential. I mean, we found out during COVID that parents can't work without us. and that the economy can't survive without the infrastructure of early childhood education. And that's a great place to be and to feel and to make sure that we're serving as many people as possible. And we're helping to be advocates for children who are underserved and making sure that they are getting the care they need as well.
With all of the child care options that there are, how did you, as the COO, and we'll get into when you became CEO, but as the COO, how did you navigate that to differentiate the brand from all the other competition that's out there?
So that's a really good question. I was talking about it this morning, and I talk about it every single day, and I mean it to just the core of who I am. The reason that I took this position, having been home with my own consulting group and my own consulting company and writing books and speaking and raising my own 4 children, when I went back to work and choosing what was Rainbow Academy at the time, and we rebranded to Lightbridge Academy, was choosing what Guy founded are the core values in the circle of care. We make every decision based on what the core values are. So whether that's caring deeply or happiness or integrity and leading by example and delivering wow customer service, and I can go on and on and on. And the stakeholders in our circle of care, but we really do care. And I wanted this position because I knew that I would never be asked to compromise my integrity. And when you're caring for people's children, there is nothing more important than transparency, recognizing that you're not even in the childcare business, you're in the trust business. And what's wonderful about Lightbridge, beyond that culture defined by the core values in the circle of care, is that we have cameras in every single classroom and open area, multi-purpose room, et cetera, where parents, not only the administration, can see what's happening in the classroom, but parents and grandparents, if the parents so choose, or family members that they want, can also see what's happening. And that's real open door policy. That's real transparency, because when humans are serving humans, mistakes happen. And what's important to me as a leader and my team and all of us is that children are always safe. And when we have a lot of eyes on them, we have a lot of people watching, and we can make sure that, one, I think it makes people kind of do a better job because that they know eyes are on them. And then secondly, I think that if there's something that's not happening in a way that it should be, that it's going to be pointed out to you quickly so that you can correct that, because children cannot be advocates for themselves. We have to be advocates for them.
Yeah. Well, you figured out very quickly, as you pointed out, that you were not in the childcare business, and you said I was in the trust business. And I hope that there are the folks that are listening to this that are founders of their brand, they realize what business you're in, and then there's what business you're really in. How did business change on how you really operated, besides like cameras and stuff, that you realize you're in the trust business? How does that transcend the company?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple things. I think that we have to be really transparent with people, that I indicated before. I think that trust is usually given to people in one of 2 ways. I either trust you immediately until something happens, and then I don't trust you, or I need to gain your trust over time. And regardless of how people, whether those are staff members or owners or consumers, come to us, is that if we continue to do a good job on a regular basis, is that trust will grow. Now, I also know that it's very easy to get this big bottle of trust and to knock it over with just one drop. But what sets apart the good franchisees and the great franchisees is that in any industry, things happen. In a conversation with a parent or a staff member, we might lose somebody's sippy cup. It's not that they happen, because we're going to try to prevent as much as we can, but it's how we handle things when they happen. And that's where trust comes. It's I'm listening to you, I'm valuing you, I'm trying to act upon what you say within reasonable means, and I follow through. And following through is really important. So I think being heard is one thing, and that goes so far. I call it smiles and systems. That, you can get a lot done with relationships and smiles, but you also have those systems there. I'll use an example, and I won't use my regular brand that I love so much, Dunkin' Donuts. But I will say that their customer service where I go is exceptional. But I also drink decaffeinated coffee, which is a whole nother story, and haven't had caffeine in years. So people ask me, why do you even go every day? But I love it. But all the smiles and all the personalization and all the wow customer service that my Dunkin' Donuts gives me every day is not going to be enough if every day they gave me caffeinated coffee. Because I don't respond well to caffeine. So in order to build trust, you have to have the relationship, but you also have to demonstrate that you can consistently provide the service.
Absolutely. Now, as we think about bringing franchise owners on, and especially in the childcare business, who is your ideal franchise owner? And Gigi, I want to know exactly what some of those traits that you look for.
So that's such a good question. So the ideal franchise owner, and I like to think about who are our top performing franchisees. And I can picture them in my mind right now. And they are get out there people, they're gregarious, they're multifunctional in the things that they do. They care, they're open to listening, they're open for us telling them when they're not on the track they should be on. And they recognize that business is business, work is work, meaning that you don't buy a franchise, set it up and walk away and it makes money.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. So you do buy it and you do set it up, but then you have to work it. You have to work in the business and you have to work on the business and you have to hire the right people. And it's tough. It's a lot of work, especially in the beginning when you're first learning the business and learning the concept. It can be really, really exhausting. But for those people who love it, it's satisfying too. And I think at the end of the day, that's what's important about work. Yes, we want to make sure we're generating great financial returns, but we also want to do something that's satisfying. I'll tell you someone we're not going to put in Lightbridge Academy is we did have a prospective franchisee who was very excited about going through Discovery Day and really enjoyed hearing about the concept, loved the business model. And at the end of the day, we were asking questions of people and kind of doing a little bit of a more specific and direct interview. And he goes, I just love the business model. I just don't like children. Oh. But I'm thinking about, I'm thinking about buying one. And I said, well, you might be thinking about buying one, but you're not going to be.
You're not getting one. You can think all you want, but you ain't getting one. Wow.
And also I think, it's like I said, it's hard work. Yeah. You're dealing with staff members and you're dealing with people's children.
Right. I always say you better love what you do because you're not going to get through the tough days if you don't.
Nope. You got to love what you do. Yeah. I mean, isn't that the situation for every job that you do? Right. It really is.
Loving what you do is what, for me, created the resilience. Because if you're loving it, you're like, I can put up with this. And then you also say, you know what? Most people would never have been able to put up with this. So now I got to stick with it. I can't quit now.
And I love that word resilience. And I think that's an important thing for children, an important thing for young adults is to really understand resilience because it's through many tries and many failings that you succeed. And if you are easily offended or, you're super sensitive, it's hard because you've got to get some thick skin and you've got to be willing to try until you can get it right.
Absolutely. And this is a great segue to Gigi becoming the CEO of the company. What year did you become the CEO?
So that was, 2021.
All right. We got to have some more thick skin, right? When we're CEO of the company.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the CEO that was leaving, Guy Falzerano, told me that it's lonely at the top. And I didn't really believe him. You know how you kind of don't believe anybody? Well, it's really going to be hard being a parent. Or when you get married, and you always think, I'll be different, I'm going to be different when I'm a parent. I'll be different when I'm a CEO. But it is because before I was part of a bigger team. And now ultimately I'm accountable to the board and on the board, but I don't have that team on my level around me. And I think too, with the work that we do working with young children is that at night, if I really think about the responsibility that we have and the number of children that we take care of, I'm awestruck by it and very proud of the things that people do to create that trust and to to keep children safe and secure every day, which is really the most important thing that we do. And then obviously after that is educating them and making sure that they have a good time and lots of fun.
It's a huge responsibility because you're up at night thinking about the kids who are at all these centers, the franchise owners that you're ultimately responsible for helping them succeed, your employees and making sure that there's a great culture and that they're supported. And then there's you. You have your leadership team, and lonely at the top is not a topic that's talked about enough. I can say this so you don't have to. This is my personal opinion because when I went through lonely at the top syndrome, it was this. What made me lonely was that I couldn't share my thoughts openly to everybody because what was going on in my head, some of my decisions that I was contemplating were going to affect people's jobs. So I found myself, the walls were closing in tighter and tighter, right? There was a smaller group of people that I could talk to. And that's why having the opportunity to talking with other CEOs, whether you become part of like EO or YPO or Vistage or one of these other peer-to-peer groups is absolutely critical.
It is so critical. And I think it's also critical. So I do that. I think it's also critical to have a mentor and to be a mentor at all times. So I have an executive coach. And I will say when I was first promoted into this position, I was super excited. But then with a PE firm behind me, I feel like, I've got good reins on finance and technology and operations. But when they came, they brought a whole new level of financial information and intelligence. And it doesn't happen as much now, but definitely in the beginning where I felt very much like the imposter, like me?
We all do. We all do.
Are you selecting me? Am I the one who's going to run this company? But then if you go back to what it is that you do well, that we talked about really in the beginning of this, Frank, is that really understanding where your strengths are and really understanding where your gaps are, making sure that you're empowering the people around you, creating a really supportive work environment, which we were really well known for at Lightbridge before COVID, letting people kind of come and go when they want and, making just sure they're getting that job done and recognizing that you go through all kinds of different seasons in your life because we want a lot of longevity here, which we do have here at the home office. It's really important to recognize who you are, what you need to know, what you need to learn, recognizing that I don't need to know everything, but I do need to trust that other people do, and a little bit of trust and verify too, right? And I think most importantly, empowering others to make decisions, knowing that sometimes the decisions they make won't be yours. And sometimes those decisions will be better than yours. Sometimes they won't be as good as yours. And you have to come after and help people kind of clean that up. But that's the only way they can learn as well.
Right. That's how we learned.
Yeah. So it's kind of, when I think about it is I've always been a teacher and always wanted to be a teacher. So when I went into education, it was not very favorable to my parents. They wanted me to do something else. But I recognize in the seat that I sit in now, even as CEO, that I'm a teacher of adults, whether that's the franchisee or whether that's the staff members or the consumer. And still sometimes I get an opportunity to be a teacher of children.
Well, that's who you are at your core.
Which is great. So it's good for training. It's good for support. It's good for mediation. It's good for all those pieces that we come in contact with on a daily basis.
Share with me what was going on when you were acting as COO and the company, I assume the CEO or founder was contemplating selling to private equity, and you went through that process of private equity, I assume. You must play a significant role in that. What was that like? Because there are founders that are listening to this also that are thinking, I might sell to private equity one day, and I'd love to get your quick take on that.
So there's this whole body of evidence and literature and information on the founder syndrome, which is basically that founder having created something and finding it valuable. And do they want to step away at some point? Or do they want to bring in other people to influence decisions? And I think it's super hard. I know it was hard for Guy, and he's a very collaborative man, to know that your baby and I'll use that analogy here with early childhood education. I think it's very appropriate, but your baby of whatever it is that you founded as a company that you're handing over to someone else, regardless of what financial compensation you get for that, or regardless of whether you're in a season of life where you want to spend more time with your family or travel or whatever it is. That was the heart and soul of who you were and what you created. And for many entrepreneurs who put in 60, 70, maybe even 80 crazy hours a week, more hours than there actually are in the week, letting someone else hold on to that and make decisions is super hard. However, I do think that, and I can't speak for Guy and I can't speak for founders, but I have founded some things that I've walked away from, certain organizations for women, and walked away because I was moving on to something else. But those organizations are continuing. So there's a quality of that financial value, and there's a quality of knowing that you created something that continues to grow. And it might grow not exactly the way you want it, or maybe it even grows better than what you envisioned, but you set it forth. And now there's another group of people with the resources and the capital to take it to a level that you really probably couldn't take it to on your own without that opportunity to do that.
I agree with that. I think, Gigi, that was so well said. It's really up to the individual person, whether it's going to meet their needs, because ultimately, I think that business is supposed to be, if you really love your business, you give it what it needs. That means sometimes it's not you. And if we really love our business, we realize that our business needs to be bigger than us. And hopefully our business outlives us, it becomes something far grander, right? Because we're ultimately serving other people. We're growing and we're contributing because it's not about us.
It isn't. And I love what you're saying there about serving other people. And I really do believe in the servant leadership. And one of the things that I say at every Discovery Day and with every new home office person that comes on board and every new director that we have at our company centers is I take the organizational chart that usually is the CEO up here and the C-suite VPs and all down cascading, and I turn it upside down and I put the CEO at the bottom and the C-suite and VPs and the teachers at the top, and say our job, and that's why we call it the home office, our job here is to support everyone in the field. Our job is to make their job easier. Now, oftentimes we make their job harder because we come up with these crazy ideas that we think are going to help them, and then they tell us, no, that was not helpful. And we need to change that. But overall, we exist to help them every day do a better job, and especially the people who are on the front line. So the people who are on the front line of any franchise, where they're the ones who are preparing the meal, or they're the ones who are cutting hair, or they're the ones who are caring for children, is that it's so important that those people really feel valued and that they love what they're doing as well. And so it's our responsibility to make them as comfortable as possible.
So Gigi, I'm curious, there's always, there's a great demand for childcare. What's the hot button right now for Lightbridge Academy? What is something that you guys are working on, and there's some of the challenges that you guys face?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think challenges continue to be, although the market's softened, being able to select the best people to work in the centers, to work with young children. I think one of the challenges is regulations, regulatory, and what those certifications need to be for the people who are caring for young children, and how we bring in the very best people who can do that. I think some of the great things that are happening at Lightbridge that we're able to bring to the table is a promise. We call it the Lightbridge promise of health and safety, and making sure a lot of things that came about through COVID, we were like, we already do that. We exclude people who are sick, and we wash hands constantly, and we clean things constantly. But we also went so far as to get a microcon, which is an HVAC system that is continuously purifying the air. We continue, it's supposed to be a positive, it's going to sound like a negative, is we continue to look at safety enhancements. And in a day where there's unexpected violence in all types of areas, is that it's very important for us to be very vigilant about making sure that we have a building, a community that's as safe as possible. And whether that's the construction of the facility or how we're interfacing with law enforcement or regulators, just to make sure that we are doing extra diligence in helping our children and our families be as safe as possible. I think is really, really important. And there's technology too. There's great ways for us to be able to, for prospective parents to be able to book tours whenever they want and to be able to see inside of centers without actually visiting until they're ready for that visit. So there's so many ways that we work through technology to connect people together.
Tell me about the technology on the franchisee side.
So on the franchisee side, they have access to what we call the Lightbridge Journey app. And that gives us everything from point of sale through parent engagement, through data for what's happening in their business, things like that. So it's really the arteries of the heart that kind of runs your business for you, gives you the information from running your business.
Right. It's important that we have, like a dashboard. We have the KPIs that our franchise owners understand, what's important, and we're able to measure the success. How does business coaching integrate with franchisees?
We have great business coaches, and the majority of our business coaches come from our centers or from the franchising world. So again, it's a great combination of people who have moved up through our centers and really understand early childhood education and unit economics, and people who have come from other concepts and really understand the franchising piece. But we have a lot of hands-on. We have monthly meetings with our franchisees on an individual basis. We do roundtables. We do something we call the Power Hour on a every other month basis, where we just help our franchisees to understand all the things that are happening and to share with them what other franchisees are doing. We do a scary thing where we rank everybody in their KPIs from best to not so good, and they're completely transparent, so everybody knows what's going on and who's doing what. That really motivates sometimes people to move into a different direction, and it also gives people an opportunity to talk with one another to really get information from those franchisees who are really knocking it out of the park. We do roundtables with franchisees. We just had our annual conference that I talked about, and we just did the franchise business review. And one of the highest pieces on there was the franchise community and the satisfaction that franchisees feel with the business and what they're doing.
Yeah. And I want to go back to what you said earlier about the scorecard and the transparency. I don't know a CEO who hadn't done the scorecard of full transparency, not go through their head, should we do this or should we not do this? Like, is it going to send a rippling effect? But once we do it, we realize there is great power in it.
There's a lot of power in it. So the way I always start small. So my consulting firm was called Baby Step Consulting. And I always say small steps to a big goal. We started with just saying, here are the top 3 in NPS, or here are the top 3 in revenue, or here are the top 3 in their payroll ratio, or whatever it might be. And then we did the top 5, and then, we did more, and, and we kind of rolled this out over the course of a few years so that we're like, and here's everybody's score.
Right.
And it's always a little scary, and there's some backlash sometimes, but I think it's important. It really goes with the transparency of our culture, of who we are, to be able to share that with people. And it's honest, it is what it is. And I think that in life, not everything's always fair, but there is always an opportunity for improvement.
Yeah. And it's one thing to share just like the revenue numbers. It's another thing to also share across the board the Net Promoter Score of customer satisfaction, because now you're talking about having a meaningful conversation with not just the franchisee, but the peer-to-peer kind of discussion of somebody who has like huge numbers, but they're not getting renewals. They have not great customer service numbers, where somebody that's maybe the middle of the pack, where they're getting great customer satisfaction, and that they're on the cusp of just growing and exploding because they're doing the right thing. They're getting great renewals. You can see momentum. And that's the key part, I think, when you have that full transparency of both numbers and customer satisfaction, is that it tells you a better picture of the story.
It is the best picture. It's the very best picture. So I'll tell you 2 stories. I'll tell you a story here at Lightbridge where a parent got caught in traffic and was not able to get to the spring egg hunt.
Okay.
And the child was devastated. And mind you, this egg hunt is where eggs are just plastic eggs are laid out on the playground and they're not that hidden, but still the kids are very excited about it. So when the parent got there, the child wanted so much to participate. The teacher said, it's raining now, but if you don't mind the rain, I'll do the egg hunt with you and your child. And they ended up doing it in the rain. And the mom was crying and the child was so happy and everybody was wet, but it's just recognizing that need in someone. And then I'll give you an example of why I love Dunkin'. There was one of my friends, when I was not feeling well, was picking up my coffee order. It's a large iced decaf, almond milk, 2 Splendas. I've had it for 10 years, probably more. And the lady who was making it goes, "Oh, this is Miss G's order." And she goes, "Yeah, I'm picking it up for her. She doesn't feel well." And so they wrote on the top of my cup in Sharpie marker, "Miss G, feel better," with a little smiley face. Those teeny little things where people recognize you, recognize your child for who they are, go that extra mile to do that egg hunt. Those are the things that make life worth living. Those are the things that make businesses explode. Those are the things that are not forgotten.
Yeah. It's what separates you from the pack, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what's your vision for Lightbridge now moving forward?
So my vision for Lightbridge is to continue to serve as many families as we can. We've grown up in the Northeast and we're moving down the East Coast and popping over to Texas and Ohio. And so I think that growth into other regional markets, really to be able to share the type of quality care and education that we have, is really phenomenal. And as the company grows, it gives so many people who work in our centers, whether those are franchise centers or company centers or the home office, opportunities to grow. Our senior team is senior. So one day we're going to have another bench. And so it's just very exciting to watch people grow in their own skills and development as an employee. So that's fun stuff.
Hey, well, that is the difference between an emerging franchisor and an established, mature brand, is when you realize the importance of bench strength, right? And when you're looking ahead and saying, okay, I kind of see where everybody is in their life cycle, that we need to really keep developing our farm system, because we got to continue to grow this company with hopefully people internally, but it's great also to bring outside voices in. I think it's always important to bring new people from the outside because they see things you don't see. But that's part of the CEO's job of an established brand. You're playing at a much different level.
And you got to shake it up by bringing somebody else in and from the outside. I like to do a combination of the two. I exactly agree with what you're talking about. So people who are coming in from the outside, but people who are growing. And then for everybody in the home office, I do a 30, 60, 90 conversation with them. And I ask 3 questions. What's going well? What do we need to improve? And what can we get rid of? And during those first 90 days is when someone comes from another brand or someone comes up through the ranks and they haven't wanted to say what was really on their mind, and will tell you, "Why do you do this?" And we're like, "I don't know. We just always did that," So it's such a great way to get everything just to shake it up and just to get us start thinking about, how do we have that continuous improvement? How do we make things more efficient? How do we make it simpler? And how do we better support people who are in the field?
I had an IT guy once, when we asked him that question, what should we, start and stop doing? He said, "Stop doing these reviews. I don't want to be involved in them anymore."
Well, we might have to do a few reviews. Every now.
No, he didn't want any reviews done. That's another story. Anyway, let's see, moving on. So understand that you want the vision to grow of the company. You're looking to expand the footprint. Franchising in general, what's been the biggest surprise since you've been involved?
The biggest surprise was the collaboration, and that continues to delight and surprise me every day. And I think the other surprise is how much someone who wants to work hard can benefit from the economy in the United States through the franchise system. And I would encourage anyone, whether they're young or whether they want to change their 9 to 5 or they want to do something else, to go to a franchise show, to look at different concepts, to talk to people in the franchise world. There is so much opportunity and it is so fun. And when you recognize that you are that business owner and what you've accomplished and the people that you're helping, regardless of what you're doing, as I said, whether lawn service or hair cutting or early childhood education, that it's pretty remarkable. Franchising is a wonderful thing.
And you're clearly a franchisor, but at the same time, you guys do have 17 company-owned locations. There are folks out there listening that are going to be pretty curious to know, how do you balance, and what are some of the challenges that you have as the CEO of a company that has a significant number of company-owned locations while franchising is your focus?
Yeah. So I think the benefit is that we understand every single day what our franchisees are going through. So whether they're challenged with the demands of parents and education, whether they're challenged with hiring the right people, whether they're challenged with new regulations or the construction of new sites and what that cost, or capital improvements or things of that nature. So I think there's a true understanding. I think there's an opportunity to benchmark best practices. And there's a great opportunity for us to beta test things. We also do that in the franchise community too, because they want very much to be involved in that. And it just gives us an opportunity to really be more than sympathetic, to really be even more than empathetic, because we walk in the same shoes every day.
You're living it.
Yeah. So I think it's been really good. The balance, I think, with our organizational structure and the way that we have someone who's overseeing the company centers just adds to how well we do the franchising. I think the balance has to be met, and that's basically through the organizational structure, as I indicated.
Sure. Is there a desire to expand the company-owned footprint?
We may a little bit. It just depends. I think right now the market is super tight as far as construction and new sites. And so we may do some seeding of the market with the company centers, and whether we leave those as company centers or ultimately flip those to franchisees is yet to be determined in our strategic growth, but we're always open to something exciting and new. The other thing is we have so much white space that if we can find a great site and we don't have a franchisee, we can always take it knowing that it can be a company center, but knowing that we could also sell it to a franchisee. So it gives us a lot of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Gigi, what advice would you give to folks that are interested in joining Lightbridge?
The advice that I would give to prospective franchisees for Lightbridge Academy is to take a journey digitally and really understand franchising. Take a look at all the different concepts, go to some shows, give us a call, come to a discovery day, and hear all about us. I think that due diligence is so important for people to really feel like they turned over every rock and they've made the right decision, talk to other franchisees, and then work real hard and get real excited and start taking care of children.
Very cool. And if somebody wants to get more information, where can they go?
Lightbridge Academy.
All right. Lightbridgeacademy.com.
You got it.
All right. Excellent. All right. One more thing. I always finish with the tip jar because the franchise community is so generous, and you have been so generous with information. If I'm an entrepreneur looking to franchise my concept, what would be a piece of advice that you'd give me?
Make it simple.
Okay. That's it. All right. Gigi, thank you so much for being on the show. I greatly appreciate it. You were an awesome guest, and hope to meet you someday.
Awesome. Love that.
All right. Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.